It's one thing to be optimistic. And it's one thing to say, I believe in a better future, right? But it's a completely different animal to say that everything's okay and to normalize everything that comes in front of you. And so I sometimes get questions such as, are things really bad? Should we really be concerned? Are you taking things a little too far? Are you fear-mongering? Are you one of those people that only sees the dark side of things? And I want to respond to some of these messages and questions. So basically, the idea that I'm looking for problems, therefore I'll find problems, is completely not what's going on here. I don't look for anything. I just see what I see and I hear what I hear. And I try to be a realist. And so when people say, should we be concerned? I say, absolutely. Just look around and look at the chaos. Look at the division of people. Look at the problems and the threats. And if you can't come to a conclusion that is concerning, I think that there's a problem there. That's you have an issue. And it's not that you can't do nothing about it, because you can. And that's why I think it's so important to realize how things really are. And when you have a concern, you can do something about it. You can take steps to mitigate any harm from those potential threats that you're concerned about. And so there's nothing wrong about seeing things as they are. And of course, if there is no concern about something, then there's no concern. I mean, we don't have to make up a concern. But the world that we live in is so full of problems. It's really shocking that some people act like nothing's going on. Everything's just fine. And once again, it's like there's like this push to normalize everything that is out of whack. And I don't know if it's just because of people's fear, because I know some people really do fear coming up and acknowledging things that are very undesirable. So there could be an element that people avoid the realities of the world. But once you accept things as they are, you will see that we live in a very dangerous time period, a very volatile time period. And if you're not concerned about some of the things going on, man, you've got some big issues going on that you need to address. You really probably need to just stop what you're doing and connect with the world, because you're really out of touch. And I'm trying to say that in a very respectful way. But when I get messages like, what's to be concerned about? Well, let me tell you, I have a list here. This is a short, condensed list. And for those people asking about some examples about things to be concerned about, let me enlighten you for just a moment. And I'm going to be jumping around a lot in this list, but I'm just going to try to cover a bunch of ground in a very short period of time. And for the YouTube algorithm and everything, this is my opinion. This is freedom of speech. And, this is something that I'm vocalizing my opinions to share and to express myself. So there you go. So some examples. What about the ongoing assault on the traditional family? What about the false narrative that inherently white people are racist? What about the constant push for LGBT groups to influence society in a major way when they're minorities? They want to push their values on everyone. What about our illegitimate president with dementia that is controlled by the globalist? He's a globalist puppet. Doesn't that concern you at all? That we have no real leadership, no one representing the best interest of the people of the United States of America? Aren't you concerned about the denial over the stock market bubbles? I mean, look at how inflated some of these companies are. this won't go on forever. We're going to have a major bust cycle. We're going to have some crash events in the near future. And what about inflation? Do you think everything's all very copacetic, with the government printing trillions of dollars in the last year? I mean, that's okay with you? Just to water down the buying power of your currency? What about the southern border, being overtaken by illegals? What about the censorship on mainstream media and social media? I've been dealing with that personally recently. I've gotten a few strikes on the account and had to fight those. What about the never-ending assault and demonizing of responsible and legal gun owners? People who just want to have the right to self-defense. Why is it such a problem to defend yourself? Well, because there's people who don't want you to have the means to defend yourself because they want to take advantage of you. What about the politically divided groups within our society? It seems like the population as a whole is more divided than ever before. But, that's all by design, though, right? Because people buy into the media. A lot of people believe what's on the news. And they believe the politicians. What about the cyber attacks that we've been having? What about the infrastructure and how it's so vulnerable? I mean, what concerns me is like a major grid down situation, like a lights out situation. That could be devastating. What about the bottleneck on manufacturing and shipping right now? What about food production? The fact that it's down. That the drought in the West is having major effect on crops. A lot of crops are dying. What about the wildfires out West? Forest fires, brush fires, the heat waves. What about the crime waves in larger cities, in particular the blue states? Wow. I mean, it's just getting worse. Crime is really spiking. And I'm talking like murder, and violent crimes. What about law enforcement? A record number of people in law enforcement are quitting or retiring. That's very concerning. Of course, we also have a lot of cities that are defunding the police. Does that not concern you? So, we can go on and on, but there is real major tension, between the U.S. and China, and even the U.S. and Russia. U.S. and North Korea, U.S. and Iran. I mean, it goes on and on. Are you okay with that? I mean, is there no concern that there's nation states that want to bomb us and kill us? What about the ongoing Marxist propaganda surging in school systems? Our kids are being taught bizarre ideologies. Okay. That's not okay with me, I mean, it is bizarre stuff, what's going on, this push for communism and various forms of socialism. But it's like politics has gotten into everything, even science. Science has become political. And we see this across the board, that the National Institute of Health and the Center of Disease Control, they lie to the public about all kinds of things, not just the virus that we've been dealing with or the safety of the vaccines, but they continue to spin the narrative that they didn't have anything to do with the production of certain things and they weren't involved when they were. These people are liars. You cannot trust these government groups, these departments. They just have a whole history of lying and doing things against the public. And the FBI, I mean, this is probably one of the more sad things because I used to kind of believe in the FBI when I was a kid. I thought they were amazing. And I thought, you know what, that would be one of the coolest jobs to have. But these days, there's so much corruption in the FBI and the NSA and how they target patriots, how they target law-abiding citizens and try to set people up and they spy on the American public. It's disgusting. And I have no respect for them anymore. And then American citizens doing things to themselves, destroying their own families, killing their unborn babies through abortion. To me, that's a great indicator of a falling society. When you self-destruct, you start to kill your own. So should we be concerned about that? Absolutely. And I think that in closing, one of the last indicators that things are not going well in society is how society copes with reality. When reality is so harsh and so difficult, they self-medicate. And more so than ever, you see prescription drugs for anxiety and depression at an all-time high. And you see drug use, legal or illegal, at an all-time high. And so this is what we see. We see drug use is up because people are trying to cope with all this chaos. And to tell me that everything's okay and that I should normalize all of this immorality, all of this chaos, all this criminal behavior and activity, I'll say no thanks. I'll prepare to mitigate the harm from it, but I'm not going to pretend that it doesn't exist. So should we be concerned? Hell yeah.